Thank you for this introduction. Let me at the outset thank the university for inviting me for this session and to moderate this panel discussion. But before that, I think the organizers have done exceedingly well in arranging on this platform such a luminaries today. I think we are all of you, the students in particular, are so fortunate that you will have an opportunity to listen to such senior people who have seen and done all that on this platform today. So, in fact, it is my singular honor as that I'll be and ask questions from such luminaries. I would like to say from my side, before I really ask questions, how each one of them has done well and what they are doing before, so that you get the perspective. I'll go in the sequence in which the panelists are listed in the brochure. So first I will like to ask a few questions from General Jaswal. Sir, it is indeed, I think once again I would like to thank you for sparing time. Now I like to say something more about General Jaswal, because in the army, I think one what aspires for is to be the army commander or the combat commander, but there are many commands. So General Jaswal has been, as he was introduced, the Commander-in-Chief, GOC-in-C of the Northern Command. And before that, not only that, he was also GOC-in-C or ARTRAC, which is the training command of the Army, which is equally important, prestigious. And of course, as you know, training is most important for any combat arm. And training encompasses everything. So it is not that it is not a combat, it is everything. So I would like to say he has seen everything that required to be, and he has done everything that required to be done in the army, and we are really fortunate that he is here amongst us. Now, sir, as the topic is, I had devised this topic. I thought it is really good that in front of all the audience, the youngsters, we share with them what the country is going to be in the coming decades. And this is a technology, this is a design seminar, so something related to that. So first, sir, I would like to ask that you have seen the army since the 1970s, till today you are still seeing. So what kind of transformation you have observed in all these years? That is number one. And what role has technology played in this transformation? And how it is going to happen in the coming decades? If with your experience, if we could just summarize in as much detail as possible, we have got time, sir, we shall be enlightened.
Good evening. Great pleasure sharing with such esteemed panelists and the August gathering. A great privilege for me. I would like to share a fact in life. When I was retiring, we have a medical board at the end of it, and the ENT specialist, he said, sir, there is some amount of loss of hearing, so should we make you a category? I said, no way, the army commander doesn't go back with a category. I said, by the way, what kind of frequency is not suiting my ears? He says, it is so-and-so frequency, that of the ladies. I said, that's very good news. I can withstand the nagging of my wife. So some of the questions probably I'll have to again ask depending on the mic. So you have said that what I've seen so far. Yeah, okay, I got the transformation from mine. I served for 40 years. And I also happen to be son of an army officer. So I saw right from my childhood the way things were taking place. And in the 40 years, once I culminated on to my service career, I realized 2-3 things are very important. And this is how, touchwood, at the strategic level, the transformation did take place. One, any kind of nuances that we plan to bring about changes in our equipment, in our strategy, that all depends on threat analysis. What exactly is the threat analysis? I will not name the government, it's a political statement. In 57, there was a project called Project Jyoti, which was that the army is not doing anything, फालतू का पैसा खा रहे हैं, उनसे projects बनवाओ, construction करवाओ. This is one philosophy, because we did not read the threat that time. Came 62, we realized how unprepared we were. The threat emerged. So 65, we were better prepared. And just to share with you all, by the time we graduated on to 71, we had done a lot of improvement. And just to quote to you, not only in the army, but transformation within the country which affected the army. For instance, it was on 17th of August, 1971, that Mrs. Gandhi, she signed a treaty with Russia, and Russia sent its nuclear submarines to the Bay of Bengal, and the 7th Fleet went back because of that. So here the transformation was synergy between the armed forces as also the political leadership. There was a flotilla of the Britishers which was coming. There were submarines. Again, the Rear Admiral would know the story which I'm telling. And they went back from there. So now the transformation was taking place between the armed forces as also the political masters. 71, we had a big victory. I was commissioned in 70 December. But after we had won, our victory, in a way, came in our way. We thought of the army to be too strong. We can't deal with situations. So the progression which was taking place, the transformation, and sir, you have used a very fine word, transformation, that was taking place, did not take place probably at the same pitch. But all the strategists who are there, the think tanks, they keep making prophecies, and these prophecies these days become defunct. Reason is, no one knew that Russia and Ukraine, you will end up in this kind of a situation. What will happen between America and Pakistan? Why India has suddenly become important to US? So now the think tank which is there, they make prophecies they fully well know is going to, may become rather defunct. But yet, we start preparing. Chinese, we started realizing that the Chinese cannot be trusted. Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai, they did that. I was commanding 4 Corps, which looks after Arunachal. As a Corps commander, there were deficiencies of roads, infrastructure, everything. And here the Chinese were trying to befriend us. Prophecies went defunct. They suddenly changed. And that is the time we were crying hoarse. Sorry, the infrastructure has to develop. Our defenses really came up. I can't share a military secret, but I can just say there was a war game which I had done, and I had said immediate accretion of this area is not done, you shall lose coming. We got 2 divisions, accretions in that area. So the military commanders, they kept perceiving the threat as it was emerging. The government, they came on board, and today we have forces, we have got everything. Weapon systems, it's an open secret. We have been rather slow in our ability to arm the forces the way they should be. But now, as the prophecies are changing, we are armed. And with this philosophy which is coming up, because the punchline is, we were importing most of the equipment. The import bill was so high that we could hardly buy capital equipment. So our capability part of it was reduced. Now with this philosophy coming up of Atmanirbhar, we should be able to increase our capability, think more on scientific lines, have what we want, because we shall have money to buy or manufacture at not at a prohibitive cost, but at an affordable cost. So this is the way the paces of transformation is going on. I hope I have answered you, sir.
Why we need such organizations, why we need each one of you to actually become a defender of India. I noticed that Annie has a friend in the build up to this, which is called DOI, Defender of India. And I personally feel that each one of you, especially the kids sitting at the back, are all part of the security establishment as we move forward. In some way or the other, each one is contributing. So let me start at the top. You see, warfare has been evolving over the years. Earlier, the ladai was something called evolutionary. So there were bows and arrows. So earlier we fought with swords and somebody had invented the shield. Then there were bows and arrows, so somebody invented the armor. Then people invented the rifle. Then a trench was invented. Trench was invented, then tank was invented. Tank was invented, then pillbox was invented. And like that, it kept evolving. You can see the same thing in air, you can see the same thing at sea. It's always been evolutionary. That was how warfare came about. When warfare is evolutionary in nature, I hope I'm not getting too complicated. When warfare is evolutionary in nature, the military leader takes control and actually directs the evolution of warfare. So the doctrine part actually is predominant, and doctrine employs technology into warfare. Then around the 90s, we started talking of revolution in military affairs, revolutionary warfare. Now what happens is, the doctrine itself doesn't remain supreme, but it gets guided by technology. So technology starts playing a more dominant role in the system. But both evolutionary warfare and revolutionary warfare, both of them are essentially industrial age concepts. Big tanks, big guns, lot of industry. Warfare itself is an industry. There's a big defense industrial complex which is supporting the war effort, etc. Today we have entered an era of disruptive warfare. In this, what is happening is doctrines and all are actually left far behind. Technology is very quickly kind of dictating the way we go. Now, once this happens, 3-4 things happen. The first thing that happens is that war is no longer fought on the borders, it is on everybody's doorstep. That is why each one of us is a warrior from when technology comes in. Secondly, war does not remain physical anymore, it becomes cyber physical. It goes into virtual physical domains. If somebody attacks somebody's boat somewhere or a warship somewhere, the response may not be, by attacking a warship, it may be actually jamming his banking system or something. So you are responding, you're freely switching between virtual and physical domains. So this is the second thing that happens. And the third thing that happens is that there is a huge amount of advantage that you get purely out of technology. So you may be a country with crores and crores of rupees of equipment, but if somebody has a better technology, he is able to be at par. In military parlance, the newly found vocabulary, this is known as asymmetric equalities. I mean, it's a little technical, but I'll just try to say. So what happens today is, today's army will benefit from the effort of each one of you. If anybody has a bright idea, if anybody has a bright spark, if anybody has any good thing that you can come up with, it can actually very quickly get realized and converted into a decisive weapon at war. And therefore a need was felt that if an Indian mind can head the DARPA, it can head the DIUX. If in the NASA space mission, if you read the list, 50% of the people are Indian origin. If Indians can head everywhere, it is this huge resource that needs to be harnessed. And that is where I actually started. I am going to do a little bit of I normally don't, but I will. When I started this idea, it was laughable, because it started at a time probably which was a little ahead of the time. I started this whole Army Design Bureau from one room. I actually didn't get a room, I sat in my PA's room and started it. But today it's actually a matter of pride, the way we are reaching out and getting the entire brains and the entire resources of this country, trying to put it together. It is still a job in progress. It will take a lot of time to happen. But I want to just kind of conclude with just two small messages. Warfare is no longer the domain of few. It is no longer something that is fought at the borders. And if we have to make India Atmanirbhar, every one of us sitting in this room is a soldier who has got the ability and the capacity to contribute to the national war effort. We will probably be just the people who deliver it at the decisive point. Thank you. Does that answer the question?
You have answered. I just thought for the audience, for students over here, that what is Army Design Bureau doing at this moment, and then I'll ask more questions.
Okay. So, taking off from where I left, so when we realized that we need to involve everybody into the national war effort, we created this organization. And the task of this organization was firstly to reach out to a much larger pool of, intellect and capabilities and capacities, to put across the problems that are faced with the army, to actually take promising people out into the field and give them an operational perspective, to people who are into manufacture, into designing, etc., to take them to the equipments and give them an equipment perspective, to actually fund small efforts here and there, and also to mentor. Once you give money, you just kind of don't you also sit there. It's like building a house. The moment you give some contractor money, you visit that site every day. So that mentorship to make sure that it is being put in the right place. I will only talk about 2 points from here, the funding and the perspective. For operational perspective, anybody has a good idea. Today we are open. We can take you down to our operational area and say you stay there for 5 days and get a feel of how it is to go into ambush, how it is to go to a particular, be living in a DCB or in a bunker, and come back and design something for us which will, be much better than what we have. One, so we give an operational perspective. If you have some site or something, you don't have a rifle, then we take you out, give you the equipment so that you can try out your little bit of a sub piece. So we give a equipment perspective. And lastly, funding is happening at various levels. The army has its own funds, which Sir had been controlling as GOC-in-C ARTRAC. It's called the Army Technology Board. Then there are funds which are parked at the ministerial level. Those are called Technology Development Fund. I want to clarify, these are ministerial funds. The DRDO manages them. It is not a DRDO fund. It is a ministerial fund. Only the management is with them. And then we decided that even these two funds are since being held and they are not sufficient enough. Why not throw it out open? So we started the IDEX challenge. So these are funds that are open to anybody. You just have to log on to the site and kind of put your idea through. And there are chances, if it's a good idea, that it will move forward. So these are the ways in which we put the funding across. So the ADB has basically become a facilitator. It helps you give an operational perspective, an equipment perspective. It funds you. And once you start rolling on something, then it also puts a team which mentors till the time you actually make a business out of the product.
Thank you, Channan. Now you mentioned about IDEX right now. Can you throw some more light on that, because that should be very interesting to the young audience, because it is about startups and what kind of funding and what kind of encouragement the present government is giving. I think all of you should know that this government is providing so much of trust to young entrepreneurs by way of funding, etc., and motivating, and they are creating so many channels to do that. So IDEX is one such forum, particularly for Ministry of Defence, and if you could throw some more light, few more minutes on that, that would be beneficial to the audience.
Okay. So the IDEX is loosely modeled. I'll just explain very briefly that you see the American establishment, the US establishment does not, it's largely driven by R&D. The military industrial complex, but they don't have large labs, etc. They allow R&D to happen in the private space. So they have facilitators. So for programs which they want to launch, they have something called a DARPA. So they say we want to make the next generation tank. They build out something and they tell DARPA to throw it out, and a challenge is, or that next generation tank is thrown out to the public. The DARPA becomes a repository where interaction happens. But that happens on what we want. Sometimes we just throw challenges for technologies which are 10, 15 years hence, or something that you may have a good idea that we don't. So we don't want to lose on that. For that they have something called DIUX. So while the ADBs, Naval Design Bureaus, etc., the WESEE, the Air Force Board, all these are in the domain of what is loosely the DARPA. We actually put our requirements out. The IDEX is we put challenges out. We actually put something that we don't need today, we may need tomorrow, or we put things out in the direction in which the trajectory of technology is heading. Or we also encourage you to give suo moto, whatever you think, please throw it at us. If you win the challenge, there are suo moto challenges as well. You get a government funding of 1.5 CR, as well as mentorship of the user directorate, who will guide you, help you, facilitate you in every manner to build a product. And now the IDEX is also plugged into the procurement system. So So there will be a minimum order at the end of the IDEX challenge, which is a sustainable number. So at least when you invest yourself, that money will kind of help you kickstart a business. IDEX is also plugged into the exports in some manner. We give you a license and a permission to export. So the moment you build something, some amount we will pick up, certify it, and also give you all the facilitation for exporting it abroad.
Thank you so much, Admiral. Greatly appreciate it. I want to thank the organizers for allowing me to be the token foreigner here. I've enjoyed my day yesterday in Ahmedabad. It's a lovely city. I also want to congratulate all you for being here. It's great to see a room full of young people that are interested in hearing about their nation's national security and seeing the leaders of their nation step up and ask for participation for the next generation. That's a wonderfully functional relationship that I don't always see, honestly, in universities in the United States. It was also interesting to see the last speaker who talked about your positioning and navigation and timing system being developed domestically. That's a great thing. The more GPS-enabled sort of systems that we have globally, the better for everybody in the world to have that redundancy. And for your country to develop technologies domestically, we'll have paybacks that you don't realize. We hope, for instance, that any of the new weapon systems you develop are never used, right? I look at many of the things the United States invested in during the Cold War and thank God that we never used them, right? But the money that we spent on solving big engineering problems gave us things like the internet. It gave us the global positioning system. The things that we developed during World War II gave us jet travel, space travel, microwave ovens, things that have changed the lives of people all over the world for the better, right? So when you solve these big design and engineering problems for the military, again, I hope maybe you don't have to use them. And in fact, the better the systems are that you develop, the least likely you will have to use them because strength deters aggression, whereas weakness invites it. Regarding the U.S.-Indian relationship, this is a dynamic and changing environment. As the General mentioned, it was just back in the 1970s that India was leveraging the Soviet Union against the United States, and today I think we see a situation that is very different and I hope positive for both of our countries. Now, I'm only speaking for myself, of course, but I would say that if you look at what's happening in the world today and in the last year in particular, it's very clear that the United States won the Cold War, but we have lost the peace. There was a lot of talk back in the 1990s after the collapse of the Soviet Union about how important it was to win the peace. And my country has completely failed at that task. What happened in Afghanistan and what's happening in the Ukraine are a national embarrassment from my perspective. That said, we see a whole new alignment happening and we begin to wonder how we got to this place in U.S. policy. And a lot of it had to do with our investing ourselves in the wrong partnerships. Notably, we invested a great deal of time, money, capital, and technology in helping China become the country that it is today. And that was a huge mistake. As the other speaker noted, basically they can't be trusted. Everybody in the world's figured this out. I wrote a book a decade ago called Death by China saying you can't trust these folks. You know, that's become apparent. But we did that. We invested in other countries that didn't really have our back or share our mutual interest in peace, democracy, and in basically the principles of modern liberalism. So I think there's a much more natural connection between the United States and India that we're going to have to realize is important. Then there's some very practical matters. You mentioned technology. So I can tell you, being at U.S. universities, we definitely consider India to be a center of technology, innovation, and development, and we consider you to be a brain trust. You send us your best and your brightest routinely to our universities where they make very significant contributions, notably in computer science in particular. So that we're very aware of. I think we're going to see more leveraging that. We'd much rather, I believe, have that relationship than the dysfunctional relationship that we've had with China. Manufacturing is an important thing too. We have in the US outsourced what was formerly the workshop of the world to China, and that's turned out to be a huge mistake because we've empowered an adversary, and we made ourselves dependent on a political ideology that we can't support. So we need another manufacturing partner. India is, I believe, a natural opportunity there for us. And the final question, when they all sort of integrate, is on space, which is the one that interests me the most. So I've been very excited to see what ISRO is doing, what India is doing with their civil space program. This has been just amazing to watch. You guys have achieved so much so quickly for so little, frankly. Economically, India's efforts in space exploration on the civil side have been astounding and impressing everybody in the world. Guess what? The US needs a new partner in space. Frankly, the Europeans need a new partner in space. We've got the International Space Station up there. I'm sure that you might have seen it go overhead at night. It's often the brightest object in the sky, and I think one of the most amazing things that humanity has ever achieved. $130-something billion was spent on that program. Of that, $100 billion was US money. The Russians contributed modules and they provided support, but in reality, the United States paid for most of the Russian effort on that. And the Russians have, guess what? Turned out not to be reliable partners, because once again, we tried to invest ourselves in working with people who didn't share our fundamental national principles, and it turned out that they weren't going to change. So I don't know if you saw just yesterday, Dmitry Rogozin, the head of Roscosmos, the Russian National Space Agency, announced that, or threatened basically, that Russia would remove its support for the International Space Station, which includes the system to reboost it and keep the station in orbit. And he explicitly said that the station could fall out of the sky, fall out of orbit and kill people in the United States, or he even explicitly said perhaps it can fall on India. And he thought that was funny, or a way to blame the United States for that problem. So clearly the US needs a new partner in civil space. I think there's a lot of great countries stepping up to contribute. Japan, South Korea, Taiwan are all doing exciting things in space, but more than any other country, I think India is a natural partner. It's one of the few countries that is developing a domestic human spaceflight program, which will be super important. I, as somebody who helped put together the US's current plans in space, including returning to the moon, would love to see India join the Artemis Accords, which is the US-based set of bilateral agreements with 15 other nations currently to return to the moon and to set standards for operating on the moon and working with the resources that are available on the moon to return value to everybody on Earth. So, in my opinion, I think that we have a really unique opportunity to recognize that we have practical mutual interests that can benefit each other. And in general, we have a shared global perspective and ideology that should have been working together more closely than it has been. And I would hope to see more of that in the future.
Thank you, Doctor. Excellent summary of what is it. If I could quickly ask one more small side question. As an American, what is your assessment of shift in manufacturing? Shift in manufacturing from China to India. Do you see it happening? You know the Indian system, our drawbacks also of Indian system. At the same time, China is no longer as attractive as it used to be. So is there a positive change you feel in this side, shift in manufacturing from China to India?
I can tell you that My family thinks I'm kind of crazy because I've been spending the last decade and a half trying to not buy anything from China. So I'm actually wearing a suit made in the United States, a tie made in the United States, shoes that are made in the United States. Cost me a lot of money. I spend a lot of time in stores looking at the labels and trying not to buy anything from China. And I do make a point of often being very happy when I find something made from India. Occasionally I find something from Vietnam and it's like, oh, it's a terrible communist dictatorship, but at least it doesn't have nuclear missiles pointed at me, so I'll buy that, right? But I do think that Americans, both at a consumer level and more importantly at an investment level, are looking for a solution other than China, because it's become very apparent that not only can you not trust the Chinese government globally, but unfortunately you can't trust them individually as investors or companies, because they steal your intellectual property, they violate the contracts that they'd sign. The contracts that you sign are never really enforceable in China. And on top of that, there are environmental problems, all sorts of other issues. Now, to be honest though, China gets stuff done. Having a dictatorship that doesn't care about what its people think is very, very effective in doing large engineering projects and making sure that factories get built and making sure that the interest of their companies are represented in global institutions. So they corrupt multilateral organizations like the World Health Organization, the Olympic Committee, the World Trade Organization. That's hard to counter even if you're a very populous country like India, because you have a democracy, right? And you have to consider the interest of all of your people, and your policies change when your government changes, and the same issue we have. But I do think we're going there. I think there's an excitement from the investment community and from companies that I work with to find ways to leverage what we hope will be a renaissance in U.S.-India relationships, and manufacturing will be a huge portion of that. I personally, if I could buy an iPhone that was made in India, I'd pay $100 more for that. I absolutely would.
So I just want to understand, how many of you, if I may just ask with your permission, so how many of you have interest in aerospace? Just raise your hands. Okay, that's a very decent number. So I'm going to get at least 10% to be more interested in the subject, right? Okay, so how does the Indian aerospace scene look like? So I can broadly, divide the aerospace into two: the commercial aerospace and the defense aerospace. Today I will be speaking more about the defense aerospace, but commercial aerospace is also very significant because it's growing leaps and bounds. And there is a new element that has come into the aerospace, which is the unmanned technologies as well. So coming to India, it's the commercial aerospace scene is very limited. We have two major players in the world, the Boeing and the Airbus, and then some other smaller manufacturers of the aircraft. But essentially the big commercial aircraft space is taken by these two companies, and then you have smaller companies. In India, the prime organizations, the major organizations are HAL, which is about 80 years plus old, and then you have, which has got its own inherent design abilities as well as manufacturing abilities. And then you have ADA. You may have heard of Tejas, the light combat aircraft. ADA has designed the light combat aircraft. And then you have ADE, which is a DRDO organization, which is responsible for the development of unmanned systems. This essentially captures all the platform makers. And then you have companies that make subsystems and subsystems, but we are essentially here talking about the big companies. It was a very deep pocket to enter into the aerospace, right from heavy investments, test pilots, infrastructure. So it's a very and a very long gestation period. It's a very difficult. You need very deep pockets. So in India, we have only the government-owned companies in the aerospace platform makers space. How do we compare with the world? So that's something which is very difficult question, because in various technologies we are there, and in some technologies we are lagging far behind. Let me put it this way: the aircraft that we have right now, the LCA Mark 1 and which is the LCA Mark 2, which is going to be which is in the stages of development, which are fourth generation aircrafts, 4 plus generation, whereas the Americans are already there in the fifth generation aircrafts about 10 to 15 years back. So we can say at platform level, we are at least about 15 to 20 years behind US. And why does it happen? And that's because the money makes the mayor go, right? So, for example, the F-35 platform, which is the 5th generation aircraft, has development resource of almost $300 billion. And our entire capital acquisition budget is about $20 billion. So that's, that's the huge difference here. So we have a lot of catching up to do. And in that catching up to do, we also have to understand which are the areas where we would like to focus. Spreading yourself too thin may not be the best way. There are several technologies in aerospace domain. So we'll have to identify which are the areas and where do we want to get there. Are we going to be competing with the US? Are we going to be competing with the Chinese? And where do we want to see ourselves in the next 15 to 20 years? Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much for this. But I think just for the sake of clarity, you see today, India has developed very successfully in the field of aviation. Our Tejas fighter aircraft is really a great achievement of the country. It may not meet the Air Force requirement 100%. The user has to be always demanding more and more, so it may not. But on its own, it is a huge, I think, effort and success of the country that we have been able to develop. He was mentioning about that thing, Tejas aircraft LCA. I think I must also, just to say that shabash to all the scientists and the community of aerospace engineers who have been contributing in that. Now, something that I would like to ask you is which technology needs to be developed now, looking into the future? Because we would like to see and do a little bit of crystal gazing that what kind of technology which is not there today, which our country needs to develop, what are the challenges, etc., in the field of aerospace?
Okay, so if you ask me, let's start with the basics. So you have, what are the 6th generation technologies? You have stealth technology, you have a variable cycle which can cruise at subsonic, supersonic regimes as well, and then you have sensors. So you have a host of technologies in an aircraft, right? So where are we? If you look at it, let's say that in sensor technology or in radar technology or in stealth technology, all these areas, I think we are about 10 to 15 years behind. Do we therefore, the first thing that we need to do is to understand how do we get there, and do we need to get there, and how soon do we need to get there, and do we do it on our own, or do we do it with someone's help? That's the first question. And so if you look at the technologies there, we are fairly comfortable. That on the airframe structure, composites, those technologies, we are manufacturing technologies, we are almost up there. But in terms of the technologies where there is significant gap, that's on the engine side, the stealth technologies, the sensor technologies, the radar technologies. How do we get there? So that's like I said, that if you put in a massive amount of investment, and then, like I said, the investment is staggeringly high. The F-35 development takes about $300 billion, but they're going to manufacture about 2,000 plus aircrafts. Here we are LCA that's going to be manufactured about 200 to 250 aircrafts. So there's also a business case related to each of these investments. So yes, these are the technologies that we are lagging behind, and so we need to do a lot of effort into those areas.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible at the back? Can somebody raise his hand? Yeah, thank you. I am Group Captain Purandare. I am from Vadodara. I am head of Center of Futuristic Defense Studies in National Forensic Science Unity, just 20 minutes away. And the question he's asked, I will answer in two parts. Sir has asked. First is, what is futuristic? And my seniors here have talked a lot about aerospace, national policies, the Army, ATB, Brigadier Channan, General Channan, we had interacted earlier. So I will pose it as a question. How many of you are interested in unmanned systems design? Okay, I thought there'll be more hands. How many are interested in material sciences? How many are in cyber physical security and cyber physical design? Now, when we looked at Futuristic, we realized we will not be in the big league of Tata's or Bharat Forge. We looked at 5 segments. We looked at operational software. We looked at cybersecurity, that is hardening our system. We looked at unmanned. We looked at satellite imagery analysis, and we looked at cybersecurity. So we have these 4 to 5 elements that we have identified to work. But if we look at from a design perspective, I'll not say advice, but my pointers to you will be, look in unmanned systems, replacing all Chinese components, you will get the answer. Which all areas you can work. You can look at material sciences, you can look at coatings, because that is one weak area, and look at antenna related material research. I think these are the core areas in which, as a design agency, you can look into, and lot of collaboration can be done, because you'll be working at the core. You're not working at what we work. We work in operational applications, software development, etc. And for that, you will need an ecosystem of leadership, and you will need an ecosystem of lot of simulation top-end softwares. If you can do that, and you can have a correct guiding principle, and you interact with the Army headquarters and Air Force headquarters regularly, then you will understand what core technologies you have to build. Don't bother about the product. If you are strong on the product of these 5 areas that I think are right, I think as a design agency, you will be very well placed in the defense industry in next 2 to 3 years. So these were the areas in which we look into. And the second question was where we stand in terms of forensics and cyber security. Firstly, like what my predecessor Colonel Hariharan said, if you are weak in something, you tie up with somebody who is stronger. You collaborate, and we collaborate with the top agencies in the world. We collaborate with American security agencies, American security experts, and that is how we have strengthened ourselves. But if you look at cyber security, I would say in the race, the threat is ahead of us. We are lagging behind. Our power structures, our national infrastructure needs a very serious audit to understand where we stand. And the next war will be space and cyber and unmanned. These are the 3 areas where the next wars are going to be. Yes, it is a surprise that Russia has found a land battle, and the land battle will always remain because you have to sit on territory. But these 3 areas wherein you can really, we feel is the next wars are going to be fought, and technology's interest is unmanned systems, cyber security, and space situational awareness. And this is where we are working, and we request your presence during the DEF Expo, where we're putting a big stall to exhibit what we're doing.
Everybody curses COVID except for the drone and the pharma industry. Use of drones actually accelerated after COVID. Until then, we were a struggling industry pretty much underground. 2018 regulation somewhat gave a breather, but COVID actually gave the lease of life for the drone industry, because I was never in a lockdown. I've never stayed at home. Even during the first lockdown, second lockdown, I've never stayed at home. I initially flew for the Bangalore City Police. They said, you guys have been talking about drones, do something right now. So I had a dad's friend who owned a speaker store. We went, got public announcement systems, fixed it to drones, and then flew it in containment zones. That's the first design and innovation that we did on drones. This was all in lockdown. So we had to go to the commissioner's office, get a piece of paper just to go and get that, just to have him open the store and then get the product. And then we had a drone partner who was building agri systems then. Luckily, they had larger platforms to put these speakers on. And that's how it started. And after that, we had Swamvitva, the surveying of the Abadi region in the villages of the 6.6 lakh villages for digital land records, initiated by our Honorable Prime Minister. That is when truly the mapping and survey industry using drones really transformed. Survey of India placed an order for 500 drones. Till then, nobody had seen that size of order in the private industry. It never heard of. And that really helped a lot of companies to grow. And today, I think those companies have crossed 3-4 million in turnover. And that's a very nice part. After that, agriculture saw boom. And today, agriculture drones are in the news. Our Honorable Finance Minister mentioned it in the budget. We recently had our Prime Minister also launch the Kisan drones. And that is also thanks to COVID. Now, you must be wondering how COVID and agriculture is related. When COVID lockdown happened, we had reverse migration of agricultural laborers. South India did not have farm laborers for spraying. And that's when farmers readily accepted drones. And today they are in so much demand, I get calls 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. to send drones to farms. That's how much demand. And we estimated 150 million hectares of agriculture land requires 5 lakh drones, that translates to 13 lakhs in employment. We take care of 10% of the Prime Minister's employment target. That's how big this entire ecosystem, only in agri space. I have not even ventured into other domains. And when I started with drones way back in college, 2009, we were building it as model aircrafts because we wanted to learn how aircrafts flew. And before that was in NCC. And that time drones majorly were in Bollywood industry, where RC planes were converted with cameras for cinematography, apart from defense, right? Today, we have more than 250 applications in drones. Right from collecting DNA of a sperm whale, to plucking fruits from trees, to mostly eliminating satellites going forward. I should not be telling this, but then high altitude pseudo satellite systems will come, where we have drones powered by solar flying at 50 kilometers altitude, enabling connectivity and reusability of the platform. And luckily, we are ahead of that. We have companies in Bangalore already working on that system. So we might be 3-4 years behind what US did. But this is how the spectrum is largely growing. And the drone industry also had one boost: defense. Today, the orders procured by Idea Forge, Asteria, and we have Alpha Designs, right? They have given hope, which previously drone companies did not have in the defense. They thought, okay, if we went there, we would burn a year of time and a year of money. Today, that perspective has changed. And because of that, we have large companies venturing into this defense space to supply drones for defense. I have Satya here, my very good friend from Bonvi. They are building a 250 kg payload category drone. They are the only company in India. Nobody else is there. But they have taken that step since there is confidence in the defense procurement today. And every space, right from toys to border surveillance to VVIP personal escort support, everywhere drones are coming into picture. And I think, like the mobile phone, they will become an extension for us 2 years from now.
Okay, so I'll just stop you. Tell me what is going to happen in 2050 as far as the drones are concerned.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
What is going to happen in 2 decades or 3 decades from now? What all drones will be doing?
So you're asking what all drones we will be having?
Yeah. What applications they will be having, how they will impact our life in next 10, 15, 20 years. Because you know how much we could never imagine where we could be using them, and you're using your words. So how, like mobile phones have changed our lives, will drones do a similar thing for us?
Yes, they will. So food delivery, Swiggy released their RFP, delivery starts next month. This was a dream 2 years back. You will have drones largely in agriculture for spraying, sowing, harvesting, crop analytics, tree counting, all of that space. You will have drones for afforestation, for planting trees. You will have drones in the renewable energy sector for solar panel inspection, windmill inspection. We already have that right now. We'll have more advanced ones. We'll have drones for NDT testing. So I had the opportunity to build Godrej, first time in India, drones for inspecting metal thickness for their chimneys and silos. What would take them a week and 5 lakhs took them 4 hours and 50,000. That's what we could do to them. And being a solution integrator, I have this fun. So we go everywhere and I say I'm Santa Claus, please give me your wish list. And we are also seeing drones in spaces, even drones in anti-drone technology. That's the most interesting part. Drones for perimeter surveillance, large factories, IT infrastructure are looking for that. We've had drones request for moving samples across refineries, where the test lab is at the entrance and the refinery is 2.5 kilometers inside. We've had that request, and we are integrating solution for that. I was luckily part of the vaccine delivery trials in Manipur, and we've had a few of our clients also build systems for vaccine delivery. So healthcare will become more accessible. PHCs will be connected through drones, and you can be in any village in India and then order the most sophisticated medicine and it will reach to you. So it's continuously growing. And the other space is recreation. Drone racing is becoming a thing right now, and we might have a lot of drone racers competing in the international level because we have a very strong community in that space as well.
Firstly, I must really compliment the kind of articulation of your questions. They were really deep in their content. I can only say one thing, that the nation has got its will now. We have got the will. So we can dare to dream. This is the exact line used by our defense minister. So if we dare to dream, we must provide all kinds of support to what our niche domain. There's 9 inches between the 2 ears, the brain. And I'm sure we as a nation can rise to the pinnacle. Now, since you are doing experimentations on design, etc., the conclave of threat, like General Channan had also made a mention, it is going to be non-contact warfare, except kinetic in the case of Pakistan, but from China, non-contact warfare. And cyber is one of the most potent form of humbling the enemy. You can imagine a cyber attack just on your banking system. The Rear Admiral has got a fat bank account. I am very poor. His bank account will come to mine and mine will go to him. Sorry. So I will benefit. The Sensex comes down. The NTPC, if there is 10 days of power cut, do you know what the economy is going to suffer like? So I think in this realm, you may like to work on counters of cyber. It's the easiest. And the Chinese, way back in 2007, they were having 26,000 network-centric warriors. Their aim is always this. Secondly, a very peculiar form of warfare is being initiated, which is called designer war. The designer war is that if you want to subdue the country, make it fight against its own internal infirmities and trigger those inadequacies. Like what is going on today in India, these are being triggered, and the two elements are political differences and religious differences. This is being triggered. So this is now called a form of designer war. And it is with an aim. You go back to China, it's White Paper 2008. The Global Times in that had mentioned that we have the capacity to divide India into 20 states. I don't know what design can come up, but it has to be basically addressing social media to counter this kind of threat. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all the panelists for their very engrossing and detailed and precise answers to my questions. And before I hand over for the overall conclusion of the day, if there is anything any of the panelists would like to add, which they would like to tell the audience youngsters, I can give the mic to them for a few minutes more. In case anything, Hariharan, anything from your side, if you'd like to add, or Groupie, anything you'd like to add, if you say something, you can tell them. Okay, fine, yeah. So, in case audience has any question, because although that's not the format, but yes, let us do it, because I was asking questions, but the floor is open. In case any of the audience has got any question, we shall field it. Anyone, please feel free. Please give the mic. And please identify yourself. And this question you are posing to whom? If you can say, it will help us.
I beg your pardon, but it's for the drone person who just enlightened us with the conversation. So my question is kind of based on a Disney movie. If you have watched it, WALL-E, and like they have shown a universe that is dependent upon technology. So don't you think convenience and accessibility, as you shared in your answer, that drones would be used in food deliveries and stuff? So wouldn't accessibility or convenience of things poses a great damage, or is it hazardous for humankind in the long run?
So, good question. If drones don't do it, people will still come and deliver. Right now, we are trying to solve other challenges. Think of it like this. During COVID, if there was no Swiggy or Zomato, the entire hotel industry would have vanished. Right? Yeah. What do you do during those times? So we've always evolved right from when man found fire to putting another drone on another planet. We will always move forward towards convenience. There's no going other way. And we've humanly evolved physically as well to adapt to these surroundings. Today, man is not as strong as what he was 10,000 years ago. Our bodies have changed. And we will keep changing. So change is the only constant, as they say. So if you had the same question about computers, now if I ask this, people would call me crazy, right? But we had this debate when I was in 3rd grade. Is computers a boon or bane? I can't have that debate today. Right? So technology evolves, humans also evolve, and technology always empowers. And that's a fact. Maybe it's not, we cannot realize it now, but it will happen in the future. So we always move towards convenience. Hope I've answered your question.
It indeed does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dio.
Can we see the drones in ambulance service?
Drones in ambulance service have already come. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how to put it, China already pioneered that space. I think here also we should be able to get it in the next 3 years if regulations permit. But they are definitely already there in that space. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, unfortunately, I am time bound and I have exceeded my time so much. Madam is giving me dirty looks. Only one question I can permit. Please decide amongst yourselves whose. Oh my God. 3, 4. Okay, please decide. Yeah, the lady.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, sir, but
Yeah,
this,
please, ask the question.
yeah. So my question is also to Mr. Leo. Do you see drones going, because you're saying the limitless boundaries, right? So do you see it evolving as something that can be assembled by the user, because the needs might not be, that they're boundless, right? So somebody might have a need that we are not envisioning right now. Or do you see it going the way that mobile phones are going, where, then you have certain brands and, then you can't even replace the battery and you have to buy a new one. So
I think the market will decide that. That's too much of a spread for me to put together an answer. Mobile phones were not envisioned to have camera, have these apps and all of that, right? They were only envisioned to remove that cord between the speaker and the headphone and the dialer. That's it. You needed mobility. Today mobile phone is used less for calls, I guess, and then more for everything else. It's the basic definition itself is changed. So I think it will happen with drones, but it's too far into the future and I'm not able to see that far. So
Okay. Sorry, I'm sorry. Am I
I'll
interrupting?
just
you?
add one more thing. I'm here in the campus for the next 2 days. If you have questions, you can come and ask separately.
Great news. That's great. Okay, now I'll exercise my veto right. One more question I can permit, but non-drone question. Non-drone question? Yeah. Please give him the mic.
Hello, yeah.
Hello, I am Rahul Paricharya, a professor at UID. I would like to ask a question regarding the way warfare has been described as going from, let me get it right, from progressive to ending up at disruptive, in the middle of being revolutionary, progressive, revolutionary and disruptive, right? This is very good because in a certain sense it maps the way the design field has also flowed in that way. But at the same time I have a question. My question is it necessarily a linear progression because the disruptive warfare strategies, with my limited reading of even early warfare manuals, from even how, say, in India, how Arthashastra talks about the use of spies to the art of war, the disruptive strategies have been always present, So is it a linear development the way we are looking about, or the kind of disruptive strategies we are talking about now are different from the disruptive strategies of the past? That is the question.
Okay, thank you. I think very interesting question. I'll very quickly try to answer this. You see, I actually pitched my talk and tried to, because I always realize that this is primarily a design institution, I should kind of lead it on to the design part. So that's how I build it up. So it's a good connect that you made when you related it to the design part. 1. 2, there is a difference between disruptive effect of technology and disruptions in warfare. So what you are asking is, there have always been disruptions, but they were probably tactical disruptions, human interventions, some use of technology. Today, everything is disruptive by nature. So the evolutionary warfare had its own, every battle had some little bit of a element of disruption in it, and that's how you won wars. But today, technology itself is dictating the way you fight wars. So this is a hugely technology-enabled disruption that is happening. That is one part. And because this is a disruption that is happening, the point that I would like to put across is it an opportunity? Yes. Because even the guy, putting it in another manner, I am always getting maximum marks in my class, and I'm topping at the other side, and my friend here is always just getting 30 marks. And suddenly, when both of us appear for an exam, these marks don't count at all. It's an entrance test. So it actually puts us back. So here is an opportunity for us that we do not continue to lag behind the technology curve. This disruption is an enabler to actually get us leapfrog and join right at the back. And that's where I was pitching it to the kids. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering. So that, I think, completes our panel discussion. I must thank from the bottom of my heart all my distinguished panelists for having given their time and answer all the questions. Let us give them a huge round of applause.